Recording. And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Double I Podcast. You are here with your host, Deshaun Schwan. And today I'm very excited, very fortunate. I know there's a lot of value for myself in this discussion. So I already know to all y'all listening out there, there will be plenty to take away from this and to really act upon. So today we are joined by somebody who I met during my time at my corporate job, which is dope because I know a lot of the time, and we'll definitely talk about this, corporate jobs get a bad rep for people who want to be more in the entrepreneurial space, investing. Everybody seems to be against the 9 to 5 when there really can be some benefit. So our guest today is a graduate from the illustrious, I know they always like to say, North Carolina A&T. He also got his master's from the Simon School of Business at the University of Rochester. He then went into the corporate world and started as an engineer, and actually recently just went into more of a real estate facing role, which is pretty dope. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. He's a managing partner at DAS Estates, which I believe does real estate portfolio planning, and also is the executive director for the Western region of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. He's a certified career coach and resume writer. And also what I just, was reminded of before we started here is a licensed security guard. So today we are very fortunate to be joined by Mr. Sean Allen. How you doing today, brother?
Good. Wow. What an amazing. Who wrote that bio? Wow. You really hit all the points, and you didn't say North Carolina AT&T like most people say.
Yeah.
So thank you for the accolades on that. No, it's nice to meet everybody. I'm originally from New Jersey, and a lot of people don't know I was actually born in Colorado. I'm a military brat. I lived in Germany for about a year. Went to preschool in Germany. Grew up in Jersey. Watched the movie Drumline, and that's where I was like, well, you know what? I want to go to a school like that. I want to go to Historically Black College University. And surely enough, when I visited North Carolina A&T, I went there and fell in love with it. And so fast forward to 12 years to today, I'm happy to have a civil engineering undergrad degree and a master's in business, and about a 12-year career in engineering and project management, most recently in corporate real estate and oil and gas industry. So the career has been a blessing. But I think today we're gonna hit on some other things as well outside of career and talk about some investing and really breaking down some of these terms we heard about. The wealthy and rich have 7 streams of income, and what is the real American dream. And so I've been really passionate about that with investing and real estate and coaching as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love all that. And kind of sticking in at the NCAT, NCAT experience, I would love to hear a little bit more about how that shaped, who you became since that point. I know college can be a very transformative experience for people, or kind of is in those essential years of your life where you're developing a lot of your perspectives. And I'd love to hear how that experience was for you and kind of how it shaped who you are today.
I love it. I love it. So I went to North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. I did not know anyone out there, so I literally was dropped off and had to start from scratch with networking and really figuring out who I was. I had assigned a major of civil engineering for myself because I wanted to build things. And long story short, it was amazing. Going to HBCU, you get the culture, you get the family experience. You have smaller classes, especially on engineering. 20, maybe 25 in a class. But I don't relate to seeing some movies where you've got 200 in the classroom. Yeah. And so it was like a close knit feel, lots of fun, lots of cookouts and barbecues on campus and fellowship. I was extremely involved with organizations like National Society of Black Engineers, American Society of Civil Engineers, and took leadership positions. And that's what really grew my passion for helping people with professional development. As a junior and senior in college, I was helping freshmen and sophomores with resumes, mock interviews, and we went to regional conventions, national conventions, traveled the world, Toronto, Vegas, Norfolk, Virginia, and just, being around engineers. And we were even on a step team, Deshaun. That's right. We were on an engineering step team with NSBE, Region 2. We were hyped too, and we won. So I was really involved on campus with organizations that was related to engineering and career development, professional development, held leadership positions like vice president of a 19-member e-board for NSBE, 300 paid members. I mean, this is a big deal organization. Yeah. And also, I worked as well. A lot of people didn't know I took different types of jobs. I Was paying about $29,000 a year. But I'm going to be upfront and honest. I am blessed because my parents gave me a deal. They said, we'll pay for the first year. You go 50-50 sophomore, junior, and senior year is all on you. And if you want to go to grad school, we support it, but that's all on you. You want to be a super senior, that's all on you, right? So I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to kind of pay for school. So I did some things. I was a note taker for disabled students and veterans. They couldn't attend class. I donated blood plasma, actually, got $50 a week. I also volunteered. I was a big brother. And I was afforded the opportunity to have an internship every summer that was in project management related. And that those funds usually lasted up until about tax day, April. So if I worked over summertime, it was good until April. I was broke in April, but the next internship was coming back in May. And I was able to get some professional experience in summertime and really start to develop my skills. I'm from, just engineering, construction management, project management, and a little bit of leadership. And I wanted to focus on providing clean and reliable energy for communities of need.
I love that. No, I love that. And one thing that I'm always curious to hear about, or that I really enjoy hearing about, is that sense of culture that you get in HBCU. Myself, I went to Michigan State University, which is not necessarily the most diverse place. And one of the issues, or one of the difficult parts, I think, of especially being in a major like engineering at a school like that, is when you're struggling, you feel so alone in it. Especially every class I was in, I was one of the only Black engineers in there. And then especially I can only imagine for being a Black woman engineer. I might have seen 2 or 3 of those during my entire time at Michigan State. So I think where a lot of people struggle at that stage in life is like feeling as if nobody understands. And I could imagine, and I'm curious if you agree with this, that being around, a bunch of other, students who are striving for better as far as their education goes, if when times did get tough, you kind of feel like, all right, at least I got this community behind me to back me up. Is that kind of what your experience was?
Yeah, so going to HBCU and experiencing what a culture is at HBCU was very different. I grew up predominantly white area from kindergarten till the time I graduated high school. So luckily, going to North Carolina A&T, when I walked on campus and I saw thousands of students who looked like me, but they were all so different, from goth dressers to the sports, to the band, just like what you've seen in the movies, to the nerds, to the smart folks, to the New Jersey crowd that was dancing, to the DC people that was wearing very extravagant clothing. I was just like, wow. To me, straight up, it was like, there's all kind of type of Black folk, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that was the first point where it's like, there's a part to fit in. I could be an engineer and still be really, really cool. Because one of my friends was the drum major of the band and was doing splits on the field and also in class with us, right? So what it feels like is it's a humbling experience, because I was always like the token Black kid in school. And honors classes for like science and things of that nature. And when I went to A&T, I was like, oh, I'm not the smartest one in the room. And there's about 10 others that look like me that are smarter and more intelligent than me, right? Yeah. Blowing through calculus, getting A's. I was like, I hope I can at least get a C. So I think that's what it was like. It was like you get humbled and you find out where you fit in. And race is really not a thing because everyone is different. Yeah. And it just really, it felt like family, and the professors knew you by name. And when I go back to campus now, they call me out by name and I know them by name. And it feels like you're going to a family member's house and she's teaching and she's credentialed, she's got the experience, or he's credentialed and has the experience. But it seems like they go that further step to ask you a question like, how are you feeling today? I haven't had a teacher ever ask me how I'm feeling until I went to North Carolina A&T, and I was treated like, well, how do you feel? Is everything going okay at home? Because maybe you didn't do so well on this assignment, you're really engaged in class, right? So that's that environment. And then also some of my closest friends are classmates. I mean, people who are executives now, people who literally just, left corporate America and are doing real estate full time. Other folks who are now at the top of this level in the government. And they were my classmates. And so it's just nice to be connected with folks that we've all been in the same class, same curriculum, but we went different avenues and total different parallels and paths. And we still can call each other up and just hang out. I can call up a friend and hang out who's now the vice chancellor of a university, right?
Yeah.
So that's what that family environment is like, and staying connected post graduation.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing. I think we need a lot more of that. I think too often at these schools we get so focused on the objective, the GPA. Did you get this assignment done by this date? And like you said, nobody really takes the time to ask, hey, how are you feeling? Are you having to work a job outside of class that's making it difficult for you to meet an assignment deadline at this time? And I feel like when you start at least asking those questions a lot, like you said, allows students to feel, heard and valued, which can make it a lot easier, because there are inevitably going to be times when you struggle, right? There's going to be classes that are tough. There's just going to be times of life where you're going through something outside of school that makes school tougher than it needs to be. So that could go a long way. And I definitely do also think that idea of the range that you got to see, right? So being the token Black kid, you kind of feel, I can imagine being put into this box of like, all right, to these people, I represent an entire community, right? And then you got to go to a place where you got to see the true range of what the Black experience is. Again, you said the goth, the sports folks, the nerds, and that is so important. And I think that is something that we're going to come to find out has been a recurrent theme throughout your life, is that you don't really subscribe to the idea of unidimensionality. Like, you don't just have to be, and we were just talking about that before we started here. So I'm excited to get into that. But one thing I did want to jump back to really quick here is you talked about how many different side jobs, or I won't even call it jobs, side hustles that you had to get involved in during your time at school to pay for your education and just to sustain, yourself. I'm curious, has your relationship with the side hustle changed as you started to kind of come into your own in the corporate world and with your real estate? Have you gotten a little bit more focused, or do you still try to just, hey, if I can get involved in it, I want to get involved in it?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. How has the idea of side hustles changed from college to grad school to as a working professional? For me, in college, to me, it was a necessity. I remember the day where I had overdrafted my checking account by 75 cents on a Tuesday. And I was like, I'm not going to spend anything. And I didn't realize that my bank was charging me $25 a day while I was overdrafted. So when I got paid $100 on Friday, I was like, oh, I'm going to be good. And I was still negative. And at the age of 19, I realized that I never want to be in that position again. If I lose my primary source of income and I have a lot of bills, and I lose my income that can help me pay those bills, that could put me back to that same situation. Albeit I only had like tuition, room and board, right, and a car. But as a working professional, you might have way more expenses. So when I started to go to graduate school, which was a one-year business program, I didn't really have the time to get second jobs. And so I started a public speaking company called First Impression Speak Forever Incorporated. And it was actually a failure because I didn't really have anything to say that anyone wanted to hear. So I put up signs that said public speaking, and I put my cell phone on there and got my first call like 4:00 the next morning. And it was a person who was a public speaker looking to get hired. I was like, no, I'm a public speaker. I'm trying to get hired. And I was like, well, send me your resume anyway. And they sent me their resume, and it was horrible. And that was the birth of a resume writing business, which I started in October of 2013, officially with Sean's Resume Shop. And that grew into a career coaching company later on down the road, 2016. But for me, as a working professional, the first year, I really wasn't doing any extra sources of income. I didn't have real estate. I started investing in penny stocks. It wasn't a good experience for me, but I gave it a shot. And long story short, I met my business partner in 2012, and in 2013, we started the real estate business, Das Estates LLC in North Carolina. And I also had started the resume writing business because it was something I was passionate about, but I was investing 5 to 10 hours a week helping people for free. And it started to get to the point where it's like, I'm not hanging out at happy hours. I'm not going to Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football. I'm doing resume work after work. And that's where it's like, you know what? This is more than a hobby. This could be a business. And I got certified as a resume writer and a career coach and have been in successful business for, close to almost 10 years coming up October this year, 2023. So it has my philosophy on, additional streams of income has changed. In my 20s, I started to get passionate about real estate, and we'll spend some time talking about that, and making the sacrifice, having a delayed gratification, and starting investing in assets. My mind changed away from I need to make some extra money to how do I start to focus on net worth and assets and income, not let me just make a quick buck, $30 here, $100 here. So that's how it's kind of changed really throughout since I've graduated. And now it's somewhat the same, but as I'm engaged and going to get married soon to the love of my life and hopefully start a family, I'm also looking at another change where I can focus more on passive income. A lot of people talk about that, but passive income and real estate. So I'm still not trading as much time for money outside of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that's very insightful. And I think a major key for a lot of listeners out there, like when you are young, and this is what it sounds like your experience was, so correct me if I'm wrong, please, but there actually can be a benefit to just throwing stuff at the wall till something sticks, right? Continuing to try different business ventures, to go out on your own, start your own companies, see what various skills, what value you can add to other people's lives, right? In your case, you had the resume writing. And as you start to progress, and don't feel like you're too good for that at the start, but as you progress, right, you start to have a little bit more financial health to your life. You have a little bit more, of the experience behind you. That's when there can be a lot more benefit to getting a little bit more tunnel vision, right? Okay, I know this can be my moneymaker. I can go 10x here. And like you said, not necessarily once you get past that point, which, my age, I'm pretty young right now, I'm 24, and a lot of listeners out there will be. So I really would implore everybody, don't be afraid to go out and try something. Trade your time for money right now. If it's going to give you a new experience, it's going to allow you to build a new skill set. That in itself can be an asset. But yeah, no, I really love that. And I think sticking on the idea of that resume writing, this is just something that I have always noticed as well. I'm curious, because I see a lot of the issues with resume writing are congruent with an issue of being able to identify value. Why do you think it is that people struggle in that aspect of identifying that? Because essentially a resume is just expressing your value in a certain realm. Why do you think people struggle with that? And how do you kind of get people to change their perspective or better identify what they can bring to the table?
I think people have an issue with really highlighting their skill sets and documenting what their value is on their jobs, their career, or just in life in general for a couple of reasons. Well, I'll just be straight to the point. I think it comes down to what is your vision? A lot of folks don't know what their vision is. So how can you capture value that makes you a competitive candidate for that next role or business opportunity? So as an example, I've dealt with clients most of my clients call me and say, hey, look, I have an interview tomorrow. I already have the job, but the last time I did a resume was 10 years ago, right? And they're having an issue. They got the experience, 10 years of experience. They're 29. They've been working since 19. They may or may not have went to school, and they don't know how to capture that value for their next role that they think is already in the bag. And so they have a vision issue, because if they know the vision is I want a role where I could be, i.e. a customer service manager. I want to manage people. I don't want to deal directly with the customer complaints maybe, but I want to manage and coach the people who are dealing with that. If that's the vision, then you'll be able to capture value and document how your team leader and how you've handled complaints, customer compliance issues, and things of that nature. You know the vision, the end goal, and now you can say, well, what makes me a competitive candidate for that end goal? Well, it makes it much easier, especially if you have the job description of the role you're seeking. That's what I always recommend too, is you want your resume to really reflect the experience that you're shooting for, not just the experience that you have. It's nice that you manage projects and manage budgets, but they're looking for someone that has added value, right? Yeah. Did you save money? Did you do any continuous improvement ideas? Did you increase income or come up with ideas that brought some more business to the company or the group, right? And so when you know the end goal, the vision, then you can start to line up, well, they're looking for someone that has this, and I have this type of experience, but these are, they call them transferable skills. These are transferable skills, and I can document my experience that I have now that makes me competitive for that role if I have that type of experience. And so that's what I really recommend is you got to capture that information now and always plan for what the next role is, so you can understand what accomplishments do you need to be working on now that makes you competitive for that next role. If not, then you're just hoping that whatever you're doing now will line up for that magical role, which next for you, which you may or may not know. And then you're also not getting the training or the experience that would make you competitive for that role.
Yeah. So what's your practice in keeping aligned with your vision, or visions change, life is a very dynamic thing, right? So what you thought you wanted 2 years ago might be different than what you really want now based on your experiences. Do you have a practice, or is it like a quarterly life audit? Are you journaling, meditating? What's your way to go about that?
So I'm known as Sean, the Real Goal Setter. You can see me on TikTok
There it is.
at the hashtag. Got to put that out there. And the reason why I like goal setting is because there's a quote out there that talks about those that write down their plans or goals accomplish more, right? If you have 100 goals and plans and you only accomplish 10 of them, so that might be way better than someone that didn't write down any and didn't accomplish any. My take on it is I do an annual goal plan. And at that top of that goal plan, I start off with vision. What is a vision? A lot of people get vision, mission, plans, and goals kind of interchangeable. They use it or they get it mixed up maybe. My thought is it always starts with a vision. And I can tell you, my vision is to wake up and be able to spend the time with the people that I love and care about. That's a vision. And now I would create missions on, well, what does that look like? How do you get there? Well, you need to have the 3 necessities: a place to live, you need to have means for food, transportation, you need to have income or passive income coming in to be able to do that. You have to be healthy, right? And so each of those points is going to be a mission. What am I doing for the health side, the mind, body, spirit? What am I doing to keep my mind, intellectually adept or competent, mind, body, spirit? What am I doing to be spiritual, meditating, things of that nature? If you're religious, fine. Spiritual, fine. Those are the missions, and then the finance side is key, because the money that you make, I'm sorry, money sets your lifestyle. There's things that if you make $5,000 a year, $50,000 a year, or $500,000 a year, they're all in multitudes of 10. But there's a big difference between a lifestyle for $5,000 a year to $50,000 a year, and from $50,000 to $500,000 a year is a big jump in lifestyle. And so those are really right there. The top 4 missions is mind, body, spirit, income, things of that nature. And then once you have the missions, I say break it out into goals. Well, what's the income goal? Do you have a balance sheet? Have you thought about that? Who's your board of directors? You have a tax person? What about life insurance? You think about retirement, stocks, penny stocks? Are you doing investing on Cash App, Robinhood, or are you going E-Trade? All those things. Now you start to break out the goals. And before you know it, I kid you not, John, you'll have a 5 or 6 page fun goal plan of just stuff, laundry list of goals. I want to skydive. I want to meet my partner. You just have and guess what? At the end of the day, you've done more than what majority of adults have done. And that is having a written goal plan. If you do it every year and you can track it and you can check off things and see what you accomplished, what you didn't accomplish, that works amazing wonders for confidence and being able to hold yourself accountable on accomplishing your goals. And as things change throughout life, because life happens, you just update it. The vision probably won't change, but the missions probably will. And you need to create more goals that you can check in with yearly or quarterly. And then also bring your significant other, your partner in as well, and have them be part of the conversation, and eventually do one on your own as a partner, as a couple, as a family.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing before we get into the real estate here, I want to, dive a little bit deeper on this. I'm curious how often you spend thinking about those goals, because I think one thing that I've been starting to realize, or that I've always kind of known about myself, but now I think I'm starting to learn how to combat the negative aspect of it, is I can be I have a natural inclination to be very outcome oriented. And I have a bunch of goals too. I like to write out my goals. But I find myself sometimes focusing on them too much to where it gets a little bit destructive, and I'm not able to necessarily focus on the present or implementing systems that allow me to work towards those goals. So I'm curious what that balance is like for you. Are your goals something that you are reviewing on the daily, or are you more so figuring out, okay, here's my goals, here's the system I'm putting in place to implement them. Now I'm just going to live and I'll check back on these every week, every month. I'm curious what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so it changes each year. I mean, typically I would create the goal plan. I would start working on it in November. So some
Mm,
folks have the New Year's resolution, so that's wonderful. Some folks have the the birthday plans. That's wonderful. For
mm,
me, I would start working on the goal plan in November because I realized it might take some time, a couple of
mm,
weeks, a couple of months. So that way, come the beginning of the year for me, I have my goal plan, and I typically don't really look at the goal plan, I guess officially, maybe more than 2 or 3 times a year. It
mm,
seems like around April 15th, which happens to be tax day, that I look at my goal plan because taxes is important.
mm-hmm,
And so it seems like April of each year I look at goal plans, and then my birthday is in September. So usually over the summertime I kind of check in as well because time's running out, right? You got these goals, and it's September, things haven't happened, and before I know it's November again.
mm,
But the vision pops up, and I've really experienced this more recently. The vision's in my mind daily.
mm,
I'm very confident, Deshaun, that and anyone listening, and I hope you all agree, every decision you make, especially if it involves money, will either get you one step closer to your vision or one step away. There's
mm,
very little decisions that you'll make that are neutral. It's either going to help you or hurt you. And even with food, I did some bodybuilding back in the day. I know you talked about the personal training thing a little bit. We didn't go into that because that's a lifestyle. It's crazy, but it was the same thing. Everything you put in your body, whether it has artificial flavors, color added, uh, whatever it is, saturated fats, trans fats, it's either going to help you or hurt you. That's why
mm,
reading those ingredient labels is key. And so when I did that, the personal training regimen in 2020, I realized like life is the same way. Like, why are we buying all this stuff that my vision doesn't have me sitting around in a bunch of designer wear and just having all this stuff that really, for me, that wasn't really my vision. So I want to make sure that the decisions I'm making on a daily basis is lining up. I mean, I could probably show you on my phone, like on my calendar, I have, here's an example here, it's
mm.
everyone has Google Calendar, maybe,
Yep.
maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it says goals for today. It's Friday, June 2nd. So this is recently. I came up with one, two, three, about 8 goals for today,
Mm,
for that day. Now, I didn't complete all of them, but I completed about 3 or 4 of them. And so for me, I think calendaring is really important.
mm,
If you're managing your time, I mean, I have to plan relaxation time. I plan baths. I plan massages. I plan travel. And yeah, I plan goals, investments, and research and study time, reading time, and exercise time, right? If you plan it out, I do a daily kind of calendar that so I know what's happening throughout the day.
mm,
Even some of my coworkers have laughed at me. They can give me a date, a random date in the future. And I can pull up my calendar and pretty much tell them, yeah, I'll be XYZ on July 7th, at 3 o'clock. Now my calendar's not planned out, hour to hour, but I know each day there's a couple of things that I want to accomplish, that are goals. And usually, Sean, just to be honest, those goals are directly aligned with my mission.
mm,
They might be like, okay, get an oil change, uh, you know, uh, go grocery shopping. That's part of it too. That's life. But
mhm,
the other things is follow up this client or do a promotion ad on TikTok or research following up on the 800 contacts that have an email, send them a direct email of just checking in, right? There are more business related follow up goals that I have because those are the things that often get pushed on the back burner and
mm.
they shouldn't because that's a direct impact to the top of the line. If you don't have clients or customers or income coming in, then you have all these extra side hustles. You're not making any income from them. You don't have a business. You have a hobby.
Mm, yeah, and that's very major because I think one of the things that again I started to realize more and more is that you know you have to be very intentional about how you spend your time, especially as you get older, because it becomes more valuable because
Yeah.
statistically speaking, you probably have less, nobody knows, but, God willing, you make it to 80, 90, 100, amazing. And, the older you get, the less time you have. And
Right.
also, the more time, the more responsibilities you have. So when you're 5 years old and, your day just is what it is, you run around and go sleep for a few hours. But when you're, 25, 30, 35, 40, it's like, okay, I have a job that I have to maintain. And outside of that job, I might have a significant other who I have to make sure I maintain our relationship. And then you add a family to the mix. So you have to get more and more intentional about time. And one thing about it is time is going to get spent no matter whether you're intentional or not. And that time could be spent doing things that are going to be aligned with your vision, right? Or it could be sitting on the couch watching a show, which is fine. But if that is in line with, hey, I need some intentional rest right here. I need some time to just, let my thoughts go and enjoy this with my girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, whatever. So no, I love that. And one thing that you said in there that was a quick little sentence, but I thought was really important. And this earlier on, you said goals can take weeks or months to develop. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily have, or not a lot of people have that perspective on it. I think a lot of times it's like this knee-jerk reaction, something negative has happened, or the new year is coming up. It's like, oh, I got a couple hours here. I'm just going to write out my goals for the year. And I think that there can, things of value take more time to develop, right? They always say that if it's worthwhile, it takes time, it takes resources. So you got to imagine if you only put a couple hours into setting your goals that you want to dictate the path of your life, it's going to have a lot less value. You're going to have a lot less conviction in that too, because you haven't really allotted the mental resources or the time to developing that. So that's a big thing. If you're going to be setting goals, again, I would implore everybody to actually just give it time, even if that means you're only doing it in 5-minute stretches over a couple of weeks. Like, just give your subconscious mind is very powerful, and it'll work on those things even when you're not doing it. So I thought that was really major. But with that, all that being said, I'm excited to dive into the real estate. I myself am hoping to get into real estate soon, get invested, have some assets to my name. I'm reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad right now, and I know that was a big part of what spurred your journey. Right? I feel like everything I buy now, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not an asset. This is not. But yeah, so I want to hear about your journey. I want to, hear a little bit more about what got you into real estate and what's that journey been like for you so far.
Wow, you took the words right out of my mouth, because I was going to say developing goals. You got to read or listen. Podcasts like this is wonderful. It opens your mind. It gives you different perspectives on different avenues. And same thing with real estate. So real estate, yeah, that's my thing. I'm going to take this tie off real quick.
Yeah.
It's about to get serious. I'm about to give y'all some numbers. So if you like numbers, sir, cool. If not, no big deal.
Let's do it.
So I got to say shout out to my parents again, because I had the opportunity to get thrown into a real estate landlord situation for school. We were looking at our budgets, and we're like, okay, well, if we pay $30,000 a year for 4 years, it's $120,000. Or maybe we can get a house that you can live in like sophomore, junior, senior year in college. So luckily they went that route, and they said, you're responsible for the mortgage, so you need to figure it out. My dad is a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and there's the right way, and it's his way or the highway, right?
Yeah.
So I had this $900 mortgage. I was like, well, there's 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. How do I do this? Well, I need to rent the rooms. So I found Joe and Roderick, and these are my 2 friends from college. And pretty much the mortgages was covered, and we split utilities and landscaping. And that was the beginning of me seeing real estate. And I wasn't passionate about it at that time. But for me, I had a place to live, and I was helping provide somewhere for someone else to live. Well, fast forward to my first year out of school. I'm all the way in Long Beach, California. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Actually, a lot of people don't know this. So I came to California, had $3,000 of money in the bank account. Rent was $1,600. So they wanted first and last month. So they wanted $3,200. I didn't have it. So I actually lived out of my car for about 3 weeks, because I didn't know anybody to that point. And I was like, well, I'd rather have money in the account and be able to get haircuts, lineups, and hang out. I went to the YMCA, got a membership, working out, showering up. Had my resume business that I started. I was on the street with a sign, literally. Got resumes. I got a couple of clients. One of them was a felon. He needed resume help. Did the work. He didn't pay me. I went to go find him. I was like, not a good idea. Really wasn't a good idea. So I was in a little bit of in between a rock and a hard place. And I found a friend that was an hour and a half away. I lived there until I got my first paycheck. I started August 29th, 2011, my first job out of school. I came to California July 8th, 2011. I got my first paycheck September 14th, 2011. That was a good day. I paid $19,000 for rent that one year. That's what did it for me, Deshaun. That's when I realized, and maybe y'all are listening too, all that rent money that we've paid, what do you have for it? Any tax deductions? Did it appreciate at all? Did it put any money in your pocket? You know, most folks, the answer is no. Some people did apartment Airbnb arbitrage. We're not going to talk about that too much, but they brought in some money while they were living there. But for most people, rent's gone. Sunk cost is gone money. That's where I was like, there's got to be another way. It's got to be another way. I had this similar conversation that Deshaun has led at different circles and networking opportunities. And I met this guy named David Shea. He happened to be a coworker. And we were just vibing on the same thing, real estate. And we're like, well, how do we do it? It's like, well, we got to save up money. It's like, well, I can save up $700 a month, which is $8,400 a year. It's like, I can do the same thing. So after a year, we had $17,000 together. And we're like, well, let's get into real estate. And that's where the idea was born. It was just an idea and questions. And how do we get started? What type of real estate do we get into? And that was really, really the start. I was motivated because I don't want to pay $19,000 ever again and have nothing to speak for it. Yeah. I want to get to the point where I'm paying mortgages that are increasing. You got increasing equity, you got tax deductions, you got rental income. I wanted that. And if I needed a business partner to help get me there quicker and sooner, because we can pull our money together, then I'm all for it. And so that's where the partnership started.
Yeah, no, and really you got to stay vigilant, because I think, not a lot of people take the time to think about that, right? And that's where something like setting a vision, setting goals, that might be that spark for you to question, like, wait, yeah, I am spending, 12,000, 15,000, 20,000, especially nowadays. I mean, you could be anywhere up 25, 30,000 a year just on rent alone, depending on the area. So yeah, that's definitely a major key right there. And I think something else was that idea of going in with the partner. I think a lot of times people can be very averse to this because you have to make yourself vulnerable in a way. You have to expose yourself to an outside threat per se. But I just talked about this in the last episode with Luana, who was an amazing guest, and she was big on this, was the idea of, you go from independence to dependence, right? Everybody wants to be dependent, but a lot of people stop there. And then there's this third layer that's interdependence. And I think that's where a lot of us struggle to reach that. And it sounds like you did not struggle to reach that. You were right off the bat, like, hey, if this is what I got to do to, if we can leverage each other's strengths, each other's capital to build and grow something, then there's an opportunity here. So that's dope. And I want to hear a little bit more about that. So you get in, you invest in your first property. Was it single family? Was it a multifamily duplex? What was the first investment looking like? And then what did they stay consistent? Was it only multifamilies you were doing, or did that change at all?
Sure. So you had mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad. I highly recommend you read it. It's on a 6th, 7th grade reading level. Yeah. That was eye-opening for me. It gives you an idea of, living the American dream or going to more investments in entrepreneurship route. And then the second book is Cash Flow Quadrant. If you haven't read that one, that's what really did it for me. If you're hanging around people and you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. You're not going to grow. And if you do everything that everyone else is doing, you end up just like them, which most people are buried in debt and they're working until later in life, right? So if you want to think on a different level, you got to have the plan. And to develop that plan, you don't have to reinvent it yourself. I read those 2 books, and that's what did it for me. So get to the property. We started a company June 13, 2013, Das Estates LLC. We wanted to buy a property that we could afford with $16,000 as a down payment. Throw some numbers at you. If you buy a primary residence, you can put 5% down. And so if we were going to go that route, we could afford something that was, call it $300,000, right? 5% of 300,000 is 15,000. We would have enough for the down payment. We weren't really looking for a primary residence that we would live in together. So we said there's only 2 other options. You either have a primary residence or you have a second home, but you have to have a primary residence to get a second home. The third option is what? An investment property. An investment property usually requires 25% down payment. So you reverse math that, 25% of what is $15,000. So something in the $75,000 range, right? 10% of 75,000 is 7,500. So 20% would be about 15,000. So maybe we can do 70,000 as a purchase price because we have 16,000 ready for the down payment, which is about 25%. You follow me?
Yeah.
So where can I find an investment property for $70,000? Not in California. So we looked at different states, and I was like, well, I remember when I was in school in North Carolina in Greensboro, the properties were about 70,000, but that was a year or two ago. So what do? We went to this good old fashioned Zillow, typed it in, and we found a litany of properties that were 70,000, 60,000. So we said, well, let's give it a shot. We found one off of Evans Drive in Greensboro, North Carolina. We said, well, we have a business. We started a business. Let's do a business trip. We went out there in late July 2013, and we reached out to a realtor, and she had a list of 4 properties that was under $65,000, and none of them needed repairs. We found this one, and it was $52,000, and it was a short sale. Short sale means that if the current owner sells it for $52,000, the proceeds would be short of paying the mortgage, because for whatever happened, he might have bought it for $40,000 and it appreciated to $80,000, and he took out another loan or a line of credit, and so he has $70,000 of mortgages on the property, but the actual property now it's only worth $51,000. That's what made it a short sale. We made an offer August 1st, 2013. We closed December 23rd. So that's key, right? 6 months, our $15,000, Sean, was locked up in a property that we didn't know if we would get or not. We were like, we should close by September. I remember I was tracking it bi-weekly. I was sending to my parents, my network. They're like, you still didn't close yet? No. Long story short, that property, we closed on it. I went there, I got the keys. I spent $500 on some touch-up paint and some carpet cleaning. We hired a property manager who charged 10% of the rent. The rent for that actual townhouse, it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom at that time, was $700 a month. The mortgage was $350, and the HOAs was $50. So if you do that math, you get about a $200 monthly cash flow positive, or a monthly profit. $200. Not gonna get rich off it, but over a year, that's $2,400 of income, profit, and there's also tax deductions you get with having property that bring down the amount of taxes that you pay. And then there's the appreciation, right? That was a success property. It is. We still have it. And our property manager, ironically, reached out to us yesterday to sign the lease now at $1,400. So after 10 years, the rent has doubled, and our expenses have stayed the same. So now we're going to profit about $800, maybe $850 a month now off of that one property, which is over $9,000 profit a year off of one property. Oh, and get this. We had it officially, we get our properties appraised every 5 years. So we had it appraised in 2021. It appraised at $140,000. We bought it for $50,000.
Yeah.
So if we were to sell it, we would have $90,000 profit, right? So that's our first property, and it's the one we've had the longest, and that started our first real estate deals as Das Estates with me and my business partner.
No, and that's major, and I think that's like the big hurdle. You know, myself again wanting to get into real estate pretty soon. The big hurdle I'm having to get past mentally is like, man, well, you know, what if now is not the right time? Like interest rates are high. You know, the principal cost on the house is still high. Like, what if this isn't it? What if I buy it and it goes down? And I'm curious to hear. So you said this was 2013. How much of the impacts of the 2008 market crash we're still having? Had the market like recovered at this time, and was it still kind of in that low point before it really went up?
Yeah. So what's important with real estate is every market is different. I'm going to throw out some things that I don't necessarily fact-based, but just things I've noticed with my properties. Areas in the desert and areas that are more in the deep south that are not in a large metropolitan area, typically have a lot of lag.
Mm.
So if there's something that affects the industry, those industries usually are the ones that are hit first, and it makes sense. If a property's in the desert and the main source of income is casino and tourism, and there's a recession or something, people aren't traveling, they're not gambling. That means there's not promotions, there's not raises, bonuses, they might have to lay off folks, and that all affects the real estate market, right? And then when tourism starts to pick up, what happens? The industry starts to recoup some of their losses, and then the workers start to benefit, and then the workers can save money, and then they can start buying property, and then the prices go up. I hope this makes sense.
Yeah.
So for North Carolina at that time, 2013, yeah, the recovery was coming back around, but it was a slow recovery. So, the properties were going up 5-7% a year, and off of 50,000, a 5% increase of $3,000 is not a big deal. And so for long-term purposes, me and my partner said, we're into this real estate business for at least 15 years. This is not like the feeling that we've had when we would wake up at 6:30 in the morning and throw $750 into an investment, and by 6:42 be worth $1,500, and we set our limit sale on the stock to sell at a certain price and hope there's enough volume, and it wasn't, and it take down to be worth $50. True story. This was, we bought a property, we only making $200 a month, but 10 years from now, we'll be making $500, $600 a month, and it would have doubled or tripled in price. So to answer your question, you will have to, and it's what I do. I'm also a real estate investing coach. What a lot of people don't know is realtors are there for transactions. I'm a realtor as well for the state of California. Realtors are there for managing the compliance to make sure from point A to point B that all the forms are signed and minimizing liability, and to make sure that the buyer hopefully can get the property that they want at a fair price or as lower as possible. And if you're representing the seller, you want at a fair sales price or higher if possible. Us realtors are really not there to train you on what approach to take and things of that nature. When you reach out to a realtor, we want you coming with, hey, I'm pre-approved. This is how much my bank says I can afford. Here's what I'm looking for. Let's look at properties. So I train people who are in situations where they don't know what to do. How do I get into real estate? What strategy is for me? Should I do the BRRRR strategy? Should I do flips? Should I do house hacking shit, multifamily, or do I even want to do residential? We haven't talked about commercial. Commercial is more than 4 units, right? So there's a whole world of real estate. So I have coaching programs where I can coach you one-on-one and give you access to graphics, documents, real lease agreements, real closing documents you never see online. You can't get this stuff on Google. I'm going to give you real stuff, real numbers, help you calculate how much a mortgage could be for you if you put a certain amount down, right? So it's important to partner with folks who have been there and can coach you through those different things. So to answer your question, we found a market that was affordable. And for us, another thing you can look at is the government's important. Typically red states, which are Republican states, are more landlord friendly. And blue states are typically more tenant friendly. Now let's get into it. I don't care who you vote for, but this is a business conversation, right, Sean? So when we talk in business, I'm going to want to go in states that if I'm dropping all the money that I've saved, I'm going to go to states that I know that, okay, if someone's not paying the rent, am I going to wait 9 months to be able to get them out? Because in North Carolina, I feel bad about it on one side, but there was one eviction we had to do. And on day 72, the sheriff was there. They had 1 hour to get their things out. And from a business perspective, that was 3 months of loss of income. And it was a month of loss of income when it was vacant, and the repairs, the demo as well. Luckily, we didn't have to go pay court fees for that situation, but it was still lost rent. So we got to separate personal and business. I do a lot of volunteering and nonprofit work for housing and nonprofits. It's great. But when it comes to business, you want to make sure you're in the right state with the right business approach. And if you're doing rooms for rent, or you're doing rental property and you're not going to manage it yourself, you'll probably want to go to a state that's landlord friendly, and we can talk more about that. If you're able to manage it yourself and live in it, tenant friendly states are okay, especially if you're going to do rooms for rent or house hack, where you live in a part of the house and you rent out the other part, 100% legal. You got roommates. They don't necessarily have the same rights most of the times as a regular tenant that's in a rent controlled building. because it's your primary residence and you also live there. So it makes it easier for you to handle tenant landlord conflict when you live there. It's your primary residence and it's not rent controlled and it's not a multifamily unit. So we could talk about that too. So that's kind of the first part of the question, is looking at the funds, how much you have for the down payment, because that's what's going to drive whether you can do 5% or 20% down. And that's going to drive whether you can buy a primary residence that you live in and can house hack, or short-term rental, or are you going to have to go out of state and just get yourself a piece of property that you get the down payment and you have a property manager manage it for you, and you just get that rental income with the tax deductions.
And no, I 100%. I mean, it's very simple, right, at its core. What can you afford, and what are your goals? So, and that's one thing. Like you had mentioned, there's so many different factors to consider. But if there's a good starting, if there was any good starting point, I mean, that's solid. What can I afford, and what are my goals? Like, how does that align with my vision? And I think a sentiment that's very common amongst younger folks nowadays is, I missed it. It's the opportunity is gone. What advice, or and maybe not even what advice, what would you say to somebody who has that perspective?
Yeah, and I know I feel that same perspective as well. I mean, I made some mistakes that I've learned from. Even buying the first primary residence was in South LA in 2014. And I only had 15. Now I was able to save up $15,000 at that point. I had 15, my business partner had 15, so with 30,000, right? But in LA, even at that time, 5% of 300,000 is 15,000. So we found a property that was 265,000. We ended up buying that one, which was a great investment. If we would have went just $30,000 higher and hit 300,000, we would have found one in Inglewood that we were going to make an offer on. My property has appreciated and it's brought in rental income, but I feel like I missed out because the other property has $250,000 more equity than our property that we bought. And I bet the rent is more. So I actually resonate with that. Actually, I wish I would have gotten property sooner. So I was 23 when I bought my first property. I wish I would have got in even sooner and would have bought more. But the way to combat that is it's always a good time. And when people aren't talking about it, if there's a lot of fear about it, that's when it's a good time. When there's recessions, millionaires are made during recessions. I have a friend that's me times 3. He's got 18 properties. He's 32. He bought them during the recession. And, while I was going to Vegas and enjoying my corporate life and things of that nature, before I had property, he was 21 and he was getting this refund checks and buying property. Most of my friends get a refund check. I don't even hear what they do with it. I got 5,000 back. Okay, and that's all I hear. So, to answer your question, it's gonna feel that way, and it'll feel even worse when you start to surround yourself around people who have been there, done that, and I'm around some of those circles now too, where they're making moves out of my budget. That friend I'm telling you about, he's buying $2.5 million properties. 32, right? $2.5 million properties, right? He's not any smarter or better looking than us, and he started early, and he was able to make 200,000. Roll that in, 400,000. Roll that in, 800,000. Right? So keep that in mind that everyone can. It's all It's all relevant. There's folks who that I'm coaching now that are in their 50s and never bought a property. And I don't treat them any different than a 21-year-old who hasn't bought the property either. We all are on different stages in our life. We have different responsibilities. But I can guarantee you this, from my experience, it's been a 100% success rate. Every property that I have purchased, like I said, there's been 3 townhouses, and condos in North Carolina. It's been 1 single family in LA, a condo in Anaheim, a single family in Desert Hot Springs, California, and a duplex in San Bernardino. Every single one of those are worth more now than when I bought it, have given me at least 5 to $30,000 of tax deductions each year, $5,000 to $30,000 of tax deductions each year, and have put income in my pocket. Every single one of them. It's been a 100% success rate. I don't have any stocks that I can say the same thing about. With stocks, you don't get that. You buy low, sell high, right? Or you trade options, you buy low, sell high, or you get dividend paying stocks, right? But stocks don't give you tax deductions. They don't give you rental income. So for those listening, if you don't have any property, get yourself an advisor, a mentor, a coach, and figure out what works for you. And hopefully, if you really want to get into real estate and owning real estate, you can work on delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Because I tell you one thing, in my 20s, we didn't even talk about the financial side. I made some mistakes. I got credit card debt. I had a $34,000 credit card limit. My balance was $33,590, Sean. It was. I never maxed it out, okay? But I got pretty close. So I made some mistakes. I pretty much bought a house on a credit card, okay? It's crazy. Don't recommend it. Not a good idea. But I made some mistakes. But it was great. I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s. A lot. But as of December 19th, I became a millionaire 2021 because I had $1.4 million of mortgages, but the property and investments was worth $2.4 million. So if I were to liquidate everything, net worth is assets minus liabilities, I would have $1.15 million in the bank account. That only happened because I didn't buy the Gucci belts and never had Yeezys. I only got 2 Jordans and never had a car note. And, I just focus on make the money, save. Savings is for investments. I'm sorry. For me, savings wasn't for a rainy day. Savings was for investment. When I got $20,000, I'm buying. Yeah. And I bought and I bought and I bought and I kept and bought. And it's a blessing. And you can still do that. I know things seem hard now. It just means you might have to do some things out of the ordinary. You might have to live in the desert. I mean, I've lived in garages. I've lived in closets. I've lived with 55-year-old men who act like 5-year-olds. But it was all well worth it because of the whole idea of real estate investing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question, but I just had to get a little real with it.
No, 100%. And I think, sticking on that point, you talked about the credit, and that's something that has really been interesting to me as I've started to kind of expand my knowledge is, rich people don't really talk, or wealthy people, I don't say rich, people who are truly wealthy don't really talk down on credit or debt if it's being, leveraged properly. So I'm curious, you had kind of the negative experience with debt, right? You had the credit card debt. I'm curious how your relationship with that has changed over time.
Yeah, so I'll be kind of to the point with this one. At 18, I opened up my first credit card because I had an internship in college in Wayne, St. Paul, Virginia, and I needed money for, I guess, what do you call it when you move in, like a application fee or something. I really didn't have it. I didn't have a cashier's check. So I opened up a credit card and I was able to put the $150 fee on the credit card. That was my introduction to credit. There was no class, no financial seminar that I went to. It was just like, all right, I got a credit card. My relationship with debt has changed, I would say maybe twice. From the age of 18 to about 25, I became real strategic on ensuring that I can get as much of a credit limit as I can for my age. And so just to give you some limits, I had a $500 credit card limit at 18. Every year I would call my credit card company, which is USAA, by the way, and I would ask them for a credit limit increase. The first couple of years they would just kind of usually double it. So they said, okay, sure, you can have 1,000. Then the next year, 2,000. Next year, said 5,000. But when I became 21 and I started working, and I was able to show my income, then they say, oh, well, we can give you more than just 5,000, but we have to do a hard inquiry on your credit. If you don't know what a hard inquiry is, what it is it's an official process where they check your credit and to see what bills you might have in collections, what loans you have, right? The issue with the hard credits is typically they may negatively impact your score, meaning it might bring a score down by 10 or 15 points, as an example. Hard inquiries usually stay on your report for 2 years. So if you're going to buy property, you usually want to have your credit as high as you can get because you get a better interest rate. Well, up until 25, my perspective on debt was I want to pay up my student loans. I came out of school with $50,000 student loans. And I want to get as much credit card limit as I can. Now, by the age of 25, I had $16,000 of a credit limit. $16,000 at 25. And I was paying $550 a month towards my student loans. Now, I'm going to give you some real numbers because I hope this is helping folks, because I think a lot of people don't have these conversations because they're afraid of it or whatever.
Yeah.
If you make more than $70,000 a year, at that time, it's probably a little bit higher now, you're not able to deduct the interest that you're paying towards your student loans. What does that mean? My $550 payment each month after a whole year is about what, $6,000 or so, maybe $7,000. $2,500 of that was going to interest. So only $5,000 or so was paying off the principal. So if my loan was $50,000, after year one, I paid $7,000. It would be nice to say that $50,000 minus $7,000 is $43,000. But no, my principal only went down to $5,000 because a lot of that went to interest. And I was making more than $70,000. So I couldn't deduct that interest. That's where I started to realize, like, okay, I need to pay these student loans off as fast as possible because I'm throwing away $2,500 a year to nothing, to interest, to nothing. And I had $13,000 of credit and for my credit card. And so $13,000 of credit, and I was paying down student loans. I was like, I think I'm on the right track. I can buy property, I can pay off my student loans, and I can continue getting that credit limit as high as possible. So that was kind of my first approach. I think it's a good idea to get credit, and it may come in handy if you have to buy a AC unit that typically will cost $12,000 for a central AC unit if you have property. And if your credit card is only $2,000, that means what? You have to pay it out of your account in cash money, and there's no benefit. You put on a credit card, you get reward points and other combos, and you pay it off in full before the statement. That's how you don't pay interest and get into debt. But at that point, at 25, my goal was to pay off my student loan debt, and I paid it off. I think by the age of 27, I paid off all my student loans, and I was able to start buying property. But I started to take some risky decisions with credit cards, and got into a situation that was really difficult to get out of.
So as you were kind of marching down that road to the tricky situation with the credit, was it something where you weren't aware until the problem had built, until the cup had runneth over, essentially, it had boiled over? Or were you kind of aware, but like you said, every decision you make is either bringing you a step towards your vision or a step backwards? It was like every little decision made, you had it in the back of your mind, but there was something, some piece of you that just couldn't, make that pivot to a different trajectory. What was that like? Were you always aware, or was it just kind of boom?
Yeah. There was a point when I had 3 properties and I was managing one of them, and I was kind of running that property like Airbnb when I really shouldn't have. It was a room for rent, and I was like paying for supplies and things of that nature. I was still traveling a little bit, no big deal. But I was in the process of buying my first property on my own, outside of my business partner. And I ran into a situation where I had 20,000, but I was 10,000 short. Now I didn't realize I could tap into my retirement. And a lot of people, if you have worked a couple of years, you probably have a 401k or a TSP or an IRA or something. But I didn't know I could tap into my retirement. But I needed 10,000. And I was like, well, hey, I could withdraw 5,000 from my credit card, cash money, each month. So towards the end of the month, I withdrew 5,000, and towards the beginning of the next month, I withdrew 5,000. So I had the $10,000 I needed. Boom! I got the property. It was cool. That was the tipping point, because at that point I was 27, and I had a $24,000 credit card limit. And as you can see, just in a matter of 3 days, I had put 10,000 on it. I got the rental income coming out, paid off. Long story short, I was 28. I had a $34,000 credit card limit and a $33,590 bill. I was throwing my full paychecks at it, $6,000 a month, and it wasn't touching the principal. Why? Because I was spending $6,000 a month on rental property needs, on AC unit, on travel, on just a lot of stuff. And I was at a point where I don't think I can ever get out of this debt. I don't know how to do it. I had to do a life change, and I did a life change. And over the 2 years, I paid off all that debt, got down to $0 in credit card debt. And now I still spend. Actually, I tell you the truth, I'm getting married in August. In September of 2022, I had a $30,000 statement. Okay, 1 month it was $30,000. Well, I was paying for deposits and engagement parties on the East Coast, West Coast, property, AC unit, $12,000, roof repair, $4,000. But I paid it off, right? Because I had the money. I just took advantage of the credit and paid it off. I haven't paid any interest since I became debt-free at the age of 30 on credit cards, no student loans, because I understand now that you can use credit and it gives you reward points and travel benefits. But the goal is when it hits that statement and it says your bill is $3,000, you best believe you better pay off $3,000. If not, it's going to start to negatively affect your credit, especially if you go over like a 30% utilization. And if you keep increasing your credit limit like I was, that's wonderful, but you better make sure you can pay it off no matter how much it is. And now I have an unlimited credit balance. Credit limit, unlimited, right, with American Express. So, but I make sure that anything I spend, I can pay it off cash money.
Yeah, no, that's big time. First off, congrats. And we talked about that earlier, but I didn't get to formally congratulate you on the engagement and the wedding. That's going to be dope. And I'm sure a new aspect of your life that you got to fold in. And I'm sure, you've aimed to achieve mastery in all aspects, right? So that'll just be a new one to kind of work towards that. And so
thank you.
Congratulations to you, sir. And first off, you got me thinking about this AC unit. I'm going to make sure whenever I go to a property and tour it, AC got to be updated. that 12 grand don't sound good right now. But so one thing I wanted to hear a little bit more about as we kind of get into the latter stages of the discussion here. What was in that journey, right, of you got your credit, you're building up your credit limit, all right? Now you've leveraged that credit limit to pretty much the fullest extent, and now you're in a situation where I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to pay off this debt. What were some of the biggest sacrifices you had to make, and how did you get into that mindset shift that, okay, I can do this if I'm just willing to give X or Y or Z?
Yes. So actually there's a full article that Forbes did. I think it's titled How a 30-Year-Old Millennial Paid Off $34,000 of Credit Card Debt. They were really creative with the subject title, now that I think about it. And I just poured it out there straight up. I put down everything that I did to change my lifestyle. You got to work that equation. Profit equals revenue minus expenses. So same thing is when I was looking at how do I pay off this debt, everything that you spend is either going to help or hurt, right? So I identified that philosophy and I said, you know what? Let me look at everything that I spend. Do I need to be going out to eat and having Chipotle and or Italian or Thai food or Vietnamese pho soup every day? Now, a $12 meal doesn't sound much to you, but when you have a $12 lunch and a $20 dinner, that's, call it $45 a day, Monday through Friday. You add that up over a month, you're talking $250 just Monday through Friday on food. That's $1,000 a month if you do the math. It's $1,000 a month on just going out to eat, hanging out with friends, going to bars, happy hours. For me, I started to realize I need to look at first the expenses. Let me challenge what I'm spending my money on. If you got a car note, I didn't have a car note. I at least understood that I drove a hoopty. A hoopty is an old term for a car that's real old, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got it at 40,000 miles. I kid you not. I drove that thing until it was 340,000 miles. My insurance was real cheap on it because it's an old car. That was the first step, is knowing like I don't have to look like everybody else, right? When I went to Vegas, no, I wasn't flying to Vegas at this point. I was like, I want to go to Vegas because my close friend is having a bachelor party that he invited me to last week. If I fly there, it's going to be $300 round trip. But the Megabus round trip is $30. What did I do? Yes, I took Megabuses. I took Greyhounds to special events because it was a tenth of the cost. You know, I didn't stay in the fancy hotels. I roomed with people, right? And so it seems like a lot, but for me, I needed to do something drastic. I needed to cut my cost. I looked at my credit card statement and I realized that there was ride sharing companies that was double charging me. When was the last time you looked at your bills and saw that you took 3 Ubers in one night or 3 Lyfts in one night? Maybe you did, maybe you did not. But did you check to make sure that what you were charged lined up with what actually happened? Another example is I went to a large store and bought 3 AC wall units for a rental property that were $150 each. And the bill came up to $600, including taxes. I didn't need those units. I returned them and they refunded me minus the taxes. They forgot to send me the $189 in taxes. Would I have caught that if I didn't look at my statement? Well, that was the birth of me checking my accounts twice a day. Some people only look at the statement when it comes on in their email. I was looking at my expenditures, my transactions twice a day. In the morning, the first thing I did was not look at IG, Facebook, TikTok. No, that's not helping. The first thing I looked at was the bank account. What's hitting my account that I spent on? What auto pay is coming out? I identified that there was 21 auto pay drafts out of my card. 21 per month. Hulu, Netflix, Audible, Amazon, Walmart, the list goes on and on. Did I need all that? No. Cable. I'm sorry. If anyone works for Spectrum, had to cut the cable. It was $180 I was paying a month. Now I pay $40 a month, right? So that's 1/3 of the lifestyle change that I did. It was just the expenses. The other third was income. There's only so much you can cut. You still need housing, food, transportation. So I needed to increase the income. And that's where that the comment you brought up earlier was really relevant. My thoughts on additional side hustles or part-time jobs or whatever, it didn't change. It just sort of different purpose. Now it's like, I need to make extra money. Like if I'm helping a client out with a resume and they're like, I'm sorry, I only got $50 for a resume. It's like, well, I've got a $50, $49.99 colleague I can refer you to. And he can help you out real good. But I charged $200 for a resume at that time. And so I was only working with clients that would value the work that I would do for them. And, I started donating blood plasma again, right? That was $50 a week. When I was in school, as a 28-year-old, it was $150 a week. Now we're talking.
There's inflation for you.
I mean, I can sit there and be on IG or TikTok and get paid for doing nothing, and then bring us some extra income with some resumes. I started selling things on OfferUp. It started to get to the point where it's like, all right, when I get off work, I'm either cutting bills or I'm bringing in more money by selling stuff or doing extra things on the side. Personal training. Friend was like, oh, can you train me? Sure. Got my personal training license, certificate, trained them, charged them $35 an hour. It wasn't the going rate. Personal trainers are way more than that. But for me, I was helping a friend out and I was getting paid to do it, right? So I'm hoping this is giving you an idea of like times was rough, but I needed to do a whole lifestyle change. And I gave you the 2/3 of it was decreasing the expenses and increasing the income. The other third was a term called birds of a feather flock together. I was in the wrong circles. I was the smartest one in the room. People were coming to me like, man, how do you do it? You got properties and I was being just a sponge to everyone. They were sucking all the excitement and the experience and wisdom. I love that. I love coaching. But I wasn't being stimulated. I was spending the money. I wasn't getting the mentorship and the coaching that I needed to get the finances in order outside of real estate. And so the other third was really changing my network. Being around people who are me times 3. Oh, you got a couple of houses here, and that's good. We just closed on a 16 unit. You want to come by? These are real stuff that people in their 30s are doing. I
Yeah.
kid you not. There are people who are buying apartment buildings, right? So that was the other third of it. Is if you're surrounded, if you're having conversations, I just talked to my barber about it yesterday. He can't have these conversations. He needs to join this podcast. His friends, they don't want to talk about this. He wants to start multiple businesses, buy property. They don't want to talk about it, right?
Mm.
So you've got to be around people where you can have this conversation. And if they're down and they're already doing it, you need to figure out what they're doing. Surround yourself around people where you want to be, not
Yeah.
just people you kick it with. And that was the other third of it. Is I was surrounding myself around multi-million-dollar folks, people who are
Mm.
30 and are worth $3 million, right?
Yeah.
And I love some of my corporate friends that I have too, but the conversation was different.
Mm.
It was more like, got a raise, invest in retirement,
Yeah.
and I'm going on this great trip. I'm buying this ATV. I'm buying the boat. Blah 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 blah. Cool. But these other friends, they were like, "Well, I did my balance sheet. We found out our net worth went up 1.5 million. We're looking at a trust because there's some tax benefits. So we're thinking about getting an estate planner together." I'm like, "Wow. Usually you don't hear about estates till someone dies. At least I know in my family,
Yeah.
that's when the conversation comes up, or the lack thereof an
Mm.
estate. We had to pass the hat around, right, to pay for the funeral.
Yeah.
So I say that to say those are the three things: decreasing expenses, increasing income, and surround yourselves around folks that you want to be like, especially financially or investment based. Because you can use them as a sponge and get that knowledge and experience,
Mm.
exposure, network around. It's also very inspirational as well.
Yeah, no, that's all very insightful, and I think that's going to be a key takeaway, from this discussion for myself, and I'm sure a lot of listeners out there will agree. But it's just, there is a lot of value, and honestly, it's pivotal that you audit your life, not just in a financial sense, right? In a physical sense, which we're going to get to in a second to round things off here, in a physical sense, in an emotional sense, in a sense of how much knowledge you have and that you're able to actually apply, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with that because when you audit your life, especially financially, it can be scary, right? Because then you'll see really in how bad of a position you're in. And that, again, can go for all the mind, body, or the spirit. You can be in a really bad place. And I think the way that people work is we have this judge in our minds, right? And to avoid that facing that judgment from ourselves, I think we all kind of have a sense of what we should be doing to be closer to our highest potential. To avoid that judge, we just push it all down. We don't like to think about the things that we're doing that aren't in our best interest, that aren't aligned with our vision. We don't like to set a vision, because when you do things like that, when you start to audit your life, when you start to say, what's my vision, and is what I'm doing in line with that, you turn that on. And that can be harsh, especially if you're not willing to make the sacrifices such as you have, or make the lifestyle changes to be more in line with that. So that's big, and definitely something after we finish recording here, I think I need to take some time to really audit, my life in those three facets. And I think to round things off here, I really want
Yeah.
to hear about your perspective on the connection between the mind, the body, the spirit. Because I think what can happen is
Yeah.
people will be really well off in one, right? And they might be really smart, but they're not really there physically. They don't really have any sort of spiritual sense of the world. You might be physically in a great shape, but you got no wealth to your name. You don't read it all. You're not digesting informational content. What is that connection like for you, and how has understanding, or your understanding of that, allowed you to continue to pour value into others and to uplift yourself?
For me, mind, body, and spirit is very important, because if you're not feeling right mentally or spiritually or physically, you just can't perform in all facets. You're going to see some areas of concern when it comes to your primary source of income. You're going to see some areas of concern when it comes to investing and dealing with other folks. I'm going to get a little bit more real with you, because we haven't really talked about some of the risks with real estate. To date, I've housed 27 families in rooms for rent, right? And the reason why this is really, really applicable to mind, body, and spirit is because there's going to be some demons that's going to challenge you when you
Mm.
come in contact with managing people.
Mm.
Um, if your mind, body, and spirit is not developed, this landlording and room for rent thing ain't going to work for you. I have spoken to the police 3 times in July of 2022 on tenant concerns, where the tenant called the police on us for doing absolutely nothing. I was in my kitchen cooking food at midnight, right? But there were some mental health issues with that tenant that prompted them to do things that was out of order, to the point where the police showed up on the third time. They just said, "Look, I hope you started the eviction process." Right?
Yeah.
We say, "Yeah, we've done everything we can," but even the police didn't know that in that area we could not evict. Right? So mind, the police is at your house telling you should start the eviction process for a tenant that's called the police on you as a landlord 3 times, and that the police didn't even know the laws that we couldn't, right? So this is mind thing. You're right. That takes a lot. December 4th of 2021, I had to personally remove a tenant out of a property. That tenant is now in federal prison for 7 years. This stuff is real. He had a record. I got him in a motel. He immediately checked out after a day, went and was charged with trying to steal a car from his ex-girlfriend, threatening her, a lot of stuff. He's in federal prison. We're talking mind here, people. This is what when you get into real estate, you're going to be involved with mental health. It's gonna happen. I've had colleagues who have people who have mental illness. Some have suffered death, and you have to be ready for that. And so if you're not comfortable challenging yourself, if you haven't done a Strengths Finder, a Myers-Briggs, a DISC assessment, something that shows what type of professional or person you are, how you handle conflict, if you're single and never been in a relationship but can't find out why, there's some inner diving you have to do to really figure out what is your own personal SWOT. What is your strength? What is your weakness? What are the opportunities to improve? What are some threats, external things that can really affect you? These are the things that I recommend you do now, because there's going to be times when the police has called me because they're at my property and tenant A won't give tenant B their dumbbell back. And I'm on the phone with the police as a landowner, trying to figure this out, right? I could be at a bar, turn it up somewhere, but I'm on the phone with the police because someone won't give someone else's dumbbell back. This is mind, body, spirit. You have to be ready for those mental conundrums that when you're managing people's livelihood. Even just last week, had a tenant who called me because he had nobody that could help him pick up his car from the parking garage. And the landlord was the only one he had a relationship with, me, for 6 years, right? I did everything I could to help him out. Other people wouldn't understand it. They'd be like, well, why are you doing that? Let him. That's like, but mind, body, spirit wise, it's in my heart to help him out. I'm going to do what I can to help him out. So that's why I think it's important for you to work on yourself, understand what your SWOT is, understand your network, have a support group. Spiritually, I meditate, I take baths, I relax, I travel, I have stress relievers, I exercise. Fitness is part of that as well. And then, yeah, physical is important because if you're going to get into buying and flipping, you might do some work yourself. If you're going to be owning, you might have to climb on the roof. You might, just like I had to do 2 weeks ago, we have to brainstorm how to figure out the water heater issue. You got to give it a shot. And if you're not in a healthy position to use a wrench and a screwdriver, that's usually what all it takes to fix a lot of small things. You can't do it. You can't be mobile. It's going to really limit you, and you're going to say, you know what, this isn't for me. It's just too much work, even though you can hire people to do most things. But hopefully that answered the question that you have time. So while you're working on your next investment, work on that mind, body, and spirit, because you're going to need it. If you're dealing with tenants, if you're dealing with short-term rentals, if you're dealing with contractors, if you're dealing with commercial real estate, loan officers, realtors, and home inspectors, appraisers, the list goes on and on. It's a people management intensive investment. And if you're ready for it, cool. If you're not, got some work to get ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so major. You know, the mind, body, and spirit are not, even though you say them as separate words, I mean, they're all connected, right? It all is what creates the individual that is you. And if you're not tending to one, maybe you can go for a period of time where one is kind of lacking and the other two are really firing. Okay, cool. But, in the grand scheme of things, there's going to be a lot of benefit to be had there. And I think the big thing you said was just, hey, if you are not there yet, you got work to do. And I always like to connect that to, I'm a big fan of David Goggins. And he always says,
Okay.
stay
Yeah.
hard. Yeah, love Goggins. And he's big on the idea of stay hard, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle to really think about that. It's like, well, why do I need to go to the gym right now? And I don't have any reason to. It's winter time. I'm not going to be, shirtless. Or, why do I need to read books? Like, I got a job already. It's like, it's not about that. It's about being ready for the next opportunity, because that's really all that luck is when preparation meets opportunity and you're able to take advantage of those things. So very insightful. I appreciate that. And with all that being said, I think we're good to roll into the outro here. So, Mr. Sean Allen, it has been, again, a pleasure. I've taken so much from this conversation. I got a lot to work on myself, really determining what that vision is, really auditing my life as far as my network, financially, physically, how I'm doing. And just really taking the time to consider, what is it that I see for myself, especially as far as, investing goes, real estate. You got the stocks, you got whatever, people, Bitcoins, and people buy fine, whatever. It doesn't matter what your thing is, but just understanding where you fit in that lane. And I really like to leave this time at the end here, just a blank canvas for all my guests. If you want to leave the audience with anything, a question, a statement, a quote, I would love to hear it. And we'll wrap up here.
Yeah, so I'll put in a little plug for myself. I'm on TikTok. I don't really do a lot of real estate stuff on TikTok too much. I just like to have fun with it, but it's at Sean the Real Goal Setter, so SEAN. So Sean the Real Goal Setter, and you can send me an email. Same thing, Sean at therealgoalsetter.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can connect with me as well. I help coach you through goal setting, goal planning, real estate investing, all the above. I would say 5 things here, 5 things. Looking at an 18 to 24-year-old crowd, if you're in that crowd, that age group, what I usually tell those folks is really find something you're passionate about, because your job, if you go that route, it's going to be where you spend the most of your time. If you're there 8 hours a day, hopefully you find something that you enjoy doing that gives you transferable skill sets, and pays you good money. That's the first thing. Find something that you enjoy for your daytime job or your career, if you're going that route. If it's military, same thing. You'll get those transferable skills. You'll get a career through the military. If you're doing entrepreneurship, same thing. Find something you enjoy doing that gives you transferable skills, customer service, project management, and something that pays you well. Second thing is make as much money as you legally can. And in order to do that, you probably might have to do a little additional things outside. Reason why that's number 2 is because when you're looking at buying property, they're going to look at your AGI, adjusted gross income. You can look it up. And the more streams of income you have, the more that AGI will be, the more you can afford to buy property. So that's the second thing. The third thing I would say is network. And this is a great idea, great podcast. If you're not meeting a new person every month, you're falling behind. I try to meet a couple of new people each week when I network, when I go places, exchange contact info, because they may be my future boss or a business partner or client or tenant or whatever it may be, right? Or a business partner or partner. So networking is number 3 for me. Try to get yourself out there and meet new people that are like-minded and or better than you in different ways, mind, body, and spirit. Number 4 is the goal plan. Having a written goal plan. Check it yearly, quarterly, whatever you want to do. And if you're struggling with that, the best way I do is just create a laundry list of goals. Just everything you always want, like skydiving, get married, start a business, whatever. Laundry list, and then prioritize it. First top 10. Boom, there you go. You have a goal plan. What are you doing each day that lines up with that first top 10? And then the last thing, number 5, is give back. I volunteer about 10 to 12 hours per week. I do a lot with board of directors for nonprofits to help them identify property that they can use for the nonprofit, venue space, rental situations, mixed use families. I do goal setting, I do mentorship, right? Giving back is key, because you realize, like, the more you give back, the more all of a sudden opportunities just pop up, and it's a true blessing. I just got a $10,000 grant check on June 5th from FEMA for assistance with money that I already paid that there was no way to get it back. But I applied, and there's grant money out there, and I only applied because someone that I met sent me the link through Instagram. I don't even have Instagram, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll apply. And that was February 8th, and June 5th, I was granted the opportunity to have free grant money from FEMA for assistance on property improvements. Right, that came from someone that didn't even know me. Just said, oh, have you looked into this? Right. So you got to give back, and you have no idea how you'll get blessed in the end. It may not be the same way. I'm not just talking financial. I'm talking, you might get a friend, a business partner, or somebody that really looks up to you, or someone that you can look up to as well. So I'd say those are the 5 things, and you can contact me at any time via text as well. My number is public, 732-778-8080. Text me. We can talk about some things. I love real estate questions, no matter what it is. I have experience in majority of different aspects of real estate, even commercial real estate as well. So we can talk about that too. Anywhere throughout the country and international as well with Keller Williams. We have properties in Portugal and all different countries throughout the world. So no matter what it is, real estate wise or goal setting wise, hit me up, and down to work with you and get you some answers to any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. Big time. That was amazing. And make sure, like you said, go tap in with them on LinkedIn. Go check them out on TikTok as Sean the Real Goal Setter. LinkedIn is Sean Allen. And yeah, no, again, it's been a pleasure. This has been an amazing discussion. I got a lot of value from this, and I'm confident everybody who took the time to listen did as well. So thank you again. We got to do this another time. I got a ton more questions for you, but I think this is a good start. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and looking forward to the next time.
Absolutely. All right. Peace, everybody.